Hi everyone, me checking back in, still in Quartzsite, still enjoying my time out in the desert here. I just wanted to throw a quick video together because I don't really have any updates as far as scenery or other happy adventures that I've been on. Had a little bit of a work crisis last week with my computer dying and having to set up delivery of said new computer shipped out to me. So that took a lot of my time away, and I pretty much have just been cranking to get back up and running with that to make sure I stay balanced work-life. So, thought I would take a slight experiment and just go rambling a little bit today on thoughts without a whole lot of background pictures. I'll try to put a few, up until this point, pictures in and mix things in that I do have of shots, but haven't actually had much time for photography either, so mostly just trying to put this out there for partially just as a life update and a conversation more the philosophical side that I'd like to get into, and somewhat also just to stretch my comfort zone of just putting out a chatting video. So there's not going to be a whole lot of RV van life information in this one, but more just about me talking about philosophical thought and kind of some of the influences of things that I've been reading lately, and starting a conversation if anyone wants to have the conversation. A while back I watched a Netflix piece called Mission Joy, Finding Troubleness in Troubled Times. And I was kind of drawn to it because I do feel like we're living in pretty troubled times right now, and trying to find a balance and a place to be during that and to get through with kind of a sane mind. It's half of the project of being out, living in the desert, being more mobile, is to try to find a peace in what is becoming a slightly non-peaceful world. The Netflix piece is essentially based on a meeting and a conversation between Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And it was just really enlightening to see what those two, I don't want to say, well, spiritual and philosophical thinkers had to say on that topic. It's kind of a slight experiment that I'm personally taking on to reduce the amount of entertainment things that I watch online, and trying to make a concerted effort to find thoughtful content rather than just escapism content. Not that I'm perfect in that, I still watch a lot of content, and a portion of it still is just escapism and fun, because again, I'm not trying to eliminate fun in my life, but just take a more thoughtful approach to it. The documentary I'm talking about led me into a slight dive back into Buddhism and its teachings. And I certainly am not a newcomer to the thoughts and philosophies of different world religions. I've been searching for my own truth most of my life. But I feel like, in some ways, to have that conversation, I want to take a step back and tell you where I'm coming from, just to have a basis of shared thought. I was raised Elka Lutheran Christian, which is one of the more progressive, at least of the time that I grew up in, was one of the more progressive Christian faiths on the Protestant side. So progressive to me meaning the pastor at the time that was the leader of our church and also taught confirmation classes while I was going through confirmation, partly because I was an obnoxious teenager, but also trying to make a point, made a comment to him privately. At least I hope it was privately. I think it was privately. I don't think it was that much of a twerp of a child. That I found a lot more truth and wisdom in the teachings of Satanism at that point than I did in the teachings of Lutheranism at that time. And instead of losing his mind and being negative towards me, basically pivoted and shifted a little bit so that he basically was, his assignment to me for confirmation class was then to critique his sermons from that perspective, and we would talk about them later. So instead of just writing me off, because especially if we're talking the 80s here, satanic panic was a thing, and he basically just went with me to try to get back to the actual base of what my disagreements were, instead of just writing it off. So, did a lot of that, did a lot of exploration at that time, and eventually didn't find as enough substance in the modern Church of Satan for my journey that I was on. I think one of the main tenets at that time, I'm totally going off of my memory here, so don't think too ill of me if I'm misquoting. But the basic tenet of Anton LaVey at that point, the founder, so to speak, of the Church of Satan, is wrapped up in the creed of do what you will, and that shall be the end of the law. That's pretty much the base tenet of that philosophy. And in so many ways, it's not enough for me. Also did a lot of research into the Wiccan traditions of that time. And again, that gets closer to my perceived truth of the Wiccan Rede, which is, and it harm none, do as thou wilt. So it at least puts an injunction in front of that of don't hurt other people and do what's right, or do what you want to do. But I think most of the rest of my trying to chase down my own beliefs has been where's the limit that you place on as long as it doesn't harm anyone. Because you can take that all the way down the rabbit hole, and you can't move without harming somebody else's intentions or harming somebody else. In a lot of ways, you could say that I'm looking for an ethical solution to the question of spirituality, which is kind of the backwards way to do it, according to most people who actually are spiritual. And I kind of get that, and it's just the way I have to search for my own truth and finding it through philosophy and through my mind. I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that it's a lack in me that can't accept a spiritual side of the answer to that question. But that's all I have to work with. So that all being said, throwing out a little bit of my ethics that back the first part of and it harm none of the Wiccan Rede, my ethics actually fall to much more closer to anarchist philosophies. And anarchist philosophies that are thoughtful. I'm not saying everyone can just do whatever they want. Again, very much focused on that as long as it doesn't hurt someone else. Anarchism works. So my ethics on that are very much more what I've heard called rational anarchism, which is my ability to do something stops at someone else's being. Meaning that I can do whatever I want as long as I don't interfere with someone else or hurt someone else directly. The grayness that leaves is quite broad. So it kind of I think everyone in some ways has to find their own ethical line themselves. There's a lot of wisdom to a lot of the world religions and Christianity's interpretation of that line, but essentially their interpretation of the line, but I do feel like there's a lacking in how it's applied. So me personally, if I'm in other people's presence, I don't tend to use bad language. As much as I can clean my language up. I don't speak normally in a clean language, but I keep it clean around other people because I don't know if it's going to hurt them or not based on their ethics. And it's as easy of a thing I can do to mitigate that as much as I can. Same logic, if I know that there's devout Hindu people around me that are vegetarian, I probably won't eat beef in front of them because I don't know per se what their religious views on it are, and it's an easy thing I can temporarily give up. If I lived within Hindus, I'd have to work out a new solution because I very much do like eating meat. At base, I don't ever mean to dispute anyone else's beliefs, be they faith, philosophically, or whatever. I'm just saying anyone's search for truth is valid, and I'm still in my search for truth. So as long as we can respect that in each other, I'm willing to have any conversation. So back to the conversation of Buddhism and such, I'm really enjoying my current read through a book that I found through the research on that of the teachings of the Dalai Lama. It's actually a book written by the Dalai Lama on the basics of Buddhism. And at core, again, Buddhism cannot fully function for me because of its pacifistic lean. If someone is out to harm me or someone I love in a fashion that I can prevent, I will prevent that. So the pacifistic nature of Buddhism breaks down for me because sometimes it does come down to a point that one would need to physically harm someone else to defend yourself. And the only true way that I can express my current thoughts on that ultimate question of self-defense is, at least at this point in my journey, someone else doing me harm short circuits or negates my need to not do injury to another person. I could spend 5 hours talking about that one issue alone, but it's not where I'm trying to go with this. But I do want to give the background of why I really do appreciate Buddhist wisdom, but also find some aspects of it lacking. So I'm kind of picking and choosing again pieces of tenets that wouldn't ultimately be a wrapped up tenet and piece of philosophies in one category. So that all being said, one of the teachings of the Dalai Lama's book that I'm reading on audio that's really calling to me is one of his teachings on releasing attachments. And I've heard that phrase come up so much in my personal life as well lately, and it certainly plays into the trailer life, RV life of you have to simplify or this doesn't work. At least the way that I'm choosing to go about this, one would have to simplify. Reduction of attachment to things makes a lot of sense to me, and that's why I'm finding some of the teachings really interesting. And for the sake of discussion, reducing attachment also can apply to the attachment to your preconceptions of things. I tend to be someone who is outwardly very thoughtful and quiet, but inwardly very anxious. So I don't know, that probably doesn't come through a whole lot, but I have a lot of worry about how someone else perceives actions or interprets or reacts to things that I do. And part of the teaching that I think makes the Dalai Lama's own persona being very comfortable is that he's not through that lack of attachment, and it's not a detachment, but a lack of wanting to be attached per se, is he's not attached to a specific outcome of what an interaction will be. Talking for me with another person sometimes is very awkward because I don't know what's in their head as far as how they're perceiving the interaction. Where I think the approach that the Dalai Lama has chatted about in the book that I'm talking about is, if you go into that with just a feeling, a desire to interact and share with another person, rather than being attached, quote quote, to how that is going to result, it also makes for a comfortable interaction. And I think that's part of what might be problematic about the world that we're living right now, is that everybody is very attached to how whatever they say is then reacted to and perceived as. So much of our political institutions right now and our religious institutions are all very concerned about being right and how another person perceives and reacts to any discussion that they put out, that there isn't an actual true just sharing of information and thought between two people, because it's so important that the end result is that the person is right. I think it's so much more beneficial in conversations to have conversations that are based on the interest of sharing another person's views, not even being convinced by them, but sharing two opposing views and trying to make sense of what feels right for the people. Anyways, that's my thoughts. I'm not trying to make a case for Buddhism. Like I said, I have significant problems with it all the way down. But I'm not trying to say that anything actually is wrong in any of those conversations, but just trying to talk about and introduce some interesting pathways that I've been finding lately. So again, part of the entire point of this channel is trying to start conversations and true, again, sharing of thoughts between people of things that I'm very interested in talking to people about. One of the sad realities of my personality is that I love chatting with people, and I'm also really averse to talking to strangers. So hopefully through this I can build something of a net to talk about important matters that can be respectful and enlightening in the comments and bring everyone forward versus dividing us. So all that being said, I apologize for being rambly. It's kind of an experiment of trying to get thoughts out and see if it sticks and see if it resonates with anyone, to talk more in the comments. I hope to see you there. I hope to start a chat with some of you that fills the void of the rational, peaceful, and enjoyable conversation that you can have with people versus the biting and critical discussions that sometimes happen out there. So, at any rate, I will talk to you next time. Be well.